want to call for the said and any apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. If you hear your name, can you confirm your attendance, please? Councillor Reid?
Here.
Councillor McMahon?
Thanks.
Councillor McFadden?
Here.
Councillor Cowan?
Here.
Councillor Linton?
Here.
Councillor Barton?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Douglas?
Here, Lynn.
Councillor Ingram?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Maitland?
Here.
Councillor Mabin?
Here, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Filson?
Yep.
We have an apology this morning from Dr David Lewis, Reverend Harriet Johnson.
Here, thanks.
We have an apology also from Babs Mowat and Hazel Malacotti and Parent Rep John Semple. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lynn. Now come to part item 1, which is a declaration of interest. Is there any declaration to be made, Drew? Yep, got that noted. Barry?
Thank you, Chair. Just on item 9, community benefits from renewable energy developments, just a transparency declaration in that I work in the renewable energy industry, no projects in East Ayrshire, and I don't see any reason why I can't take part. Thanks.
From Barry? Linda?
Thanks, Leader. Also item 9, just for transparency, because I am a trustee in the 9CC.
Okay. Okay, is that us? Jim?
Just likewise, Councillor Mabin and 9CCs.
Okay, thanks for that. Duly noted. And going to item 2E, which was the review of additional support needs provision. And Ian Burgoyne, where are you, Ian?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This report focuses on the outcomes of the review of additional support needs provision. It looks to provide Cabinet with an overview of key local and national developments while highlighting increasing demand for services and setting out steps to support long-term sustainability. There are 3 recommendations for Cabinet to consider: to agree to the need to reprofile our existing ASN provision, to agree to the recommendations at paragraph 71 and otherwise to note the content of the report. Paragraphs 3 to 7 outline the background to the report, and from paragraph 8 we go through the national context, referencing some of the key policy documents in the space. Further legislative background appended to the report is indicated in paragraph 11. Paragraphs 12 to 14 references key messages from the Additional Support for Learning briefing published by Audit Scotland in February, including total spend across ASN, and identifies the 8-fold increase in the number of learners receiving ASL since the publication of the ASL Act in 2004. From paragraph 16, we outline the local context, and the section provides an update on progress made and next steps from the previous report presented to Cabinet in March 2023. From paragraph 17, we outline our local strategy for ASN, and from paragraph 19, provide an overview of current ASL provision in East Ayrshire. In paragraph 23, we identify that these centres are all operating at or above capacity due to the growing number of learners requiring their specialist environments. The table at paragraph 25 lists our dedicated specialist provision across education groups, and we note in paragraph 27 that there's an unequal spread of ASN centres, meaning children will often travel significant distances to access the support they require, and the first recommendation at paragraph 29 outlines actions to mitigate this. From paragraphs 30 to 32, we introduce and outline a clearly defined staged intervention model, which is illustrated at diagram 1. Detail of the 4 stages of the model can be found in paragraphs 33 to 38. Paragraph 39 describes the assessment process model, which is proposed as the mechanism to identify barriers to learning and for planning effective interventions. This model is illustrated at diagram 2. From paragraphs 42 to 46, we reference the East Ayrshire support team. This is a sizable but also a fixed ASL service, and the paper identifies that the current model doesn't align easily to either the proposed staged intervention model or our priority of delivering support to children in their own communities, so suggests that the profile of this service needs to change. Conclusions can be found from paragraphs 47 to 49, and the report identifies that by aligning resource deployment with each stage of intervention, schools will be better equipped to deliver appropriate support at the right time and in the right place. 6 recommendations are listed at the foot of paragraph 49. Paragraphs 50 and 51 outline local data, and Table 2 compares local to national findings. From paragraph 52, we reference a continuing increase in learners along with additional support needs from 20% of the school population in 2014 to 31% this year. This equates to an increase of over 1,700 pupils. Demand patterns for specialist placement and enhanced support are outlined from paragraph 53, with a table at paragraph 54 illustrating the shift in the profile of needs over the last 3 years. This is most evident in increasing numbers of children presenting with autism spectrum disorder and with social, emotional and behavioural difficulties, as seen in paragraph 55 and in diagram 5. Paragraphs 56 and 57 reference dysregulated behaviour and mechanisms that are recommended to mitigate risks to staff health and well-being. From paragraphs 58 to 62, we identify the increasing numbers of children with ASN entering P1. The change in profile of learners with ASN is referenced in paragraph 63, and from paragraph 65, the report considers options and advantages of developing and embedding resource within our local communities and much more aligned to school catchments. In paragraph 66, consideration is given to possible provision in Table 5. A summary of conclusions is outlined from paragraph 67 with 2 further recommendations at paragraph 70. The 9 key recommendations from the report are summarised again at paragraph 71. Implications from the report can be found from paragraphs 72 to 82, while the 2 appendices reference relevant legislation and categories of additional support needs recorded in the annual pupil census. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Ian. Members, any questions? Linda.
Thank you, Leader. Couple of wee points. First one is, if we refer to the table on page 24, in relation to Cross House Communication Centre. So we're saying that they'll have an intake of 30 primary 1 pupils. So get just a wee bit further information as how we're going to accommodate them, how we're going to staff it, and could staff for other ASN schools or ASN centres be brought in to fill the gap, and how would that impact on the overall landscape of Cross House Communication Centre?
Through you, Chair, I'll ask Julie McCulloch, the Interim Strategic Education Manager for Inclusion, to respond to that question if we can.
Through you, Chair, thank you for your question. So at Cross House Communication Centre, what we're doing at the moment is we've expanded the centre into Cross House Campus, which is an area that the school have used previously. So there are currently works being undertaken there to upgrade 4 classrooms for that group of children, and staff are currently being recruited. The Deputy Head Teacher and the Head Teacher of Cross House Primary School will oversee that resource, and we have so far we've met with all of the parents who have children who are going to be accessing the centre come August. Thank you.
Thanks. Elaine? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have any questions, just some general comments. I think it's important to emphasise the principle of what this paper is doing, trying to educate the children as close to home and in their communities as possible, I think is a sound principle, and I think something that we should be supporting as much as possible. I'm aware that not all the areas have identified establishments in their localities, but I think it would be a useful exercise. Well, I personally would like to go and visit all the facilities that's been talked about in the paper, and obviously extend that to other Cabinet members if that's of interest. I think that'd be a useful exercise for us to see the changes that are going to happen in these establishments. Thank you.
Actually, I think that's quite a good suggestion. I would certainly, I would endorse that. I don't know, just in terms of where we are with local members, but if they could be included as well. But Linda?
through you, Leader, and thank you so much, Councillor Cowan, for your positive comments on the paper around about the overriding principles in here. I think there's two things that we could do to assist members in how we'll move forward with this paper if it's accepted today. I think the first of which is to actually go and see existing supported learning centres and what they look like and feel like, and I think that'll also be important. I'm looking towards John there from a parental perspective to understand what an ASL centre or SLC centre is, to ensure there's that understanding, and it reduces some of the angst and worry that parents and indeed members might have in that particular space. But more than happy, clearly members on the back of this, if it's to be accepted today, what the premise would be is you're hugely aware that we've gone down a well-trodden path of full consultations, that we don't just go in and launch an ASL centre within a school. It's a very detailed and elongated process involving all stakeholders, and that clearly would involve parents, clearly young people, through our UNCRC principles that we hold dear in the council, but also staff, yourselves as members, parents. So it's a huge, and you've seen us do that very successfully recently, in fact, just in previous cabinet with Park St Joseph's, and clearly the instalment of OnThank SLC, which is working currently incredibly well. So clearly we would remit to come back to you where the recommendations agreed today with a more detailed paper around about, I suppose, the order of where we would seek, because again, nothing's set in stone, of where we would seek to put supported learning centres. What we're doing in this paper is identifying, for example, areas like Stewarton, where there's nothing at all. But I would also advise members, and it will come through, thus the connection to the Learning Estate Management Plan, that clearly there is already some capital works around about potentially the complex needs area at Doon Academy. Clearly the work already underway for improvements at Stewarton Academy, all of which would encompass a lot of these matters. So we would remit to come back to you members in due course with a more detailed and time-stamped programme of all of this. And we've actually established an ASN estate board as a premise to actually deal with that business as a subset of the Learning Estate Management Board and a further subset of the Capital Programme Strategic Oversight Group. So I hope that's helpful in terms of the expectations of today are very much around about the principles of this, but clearly the detail will be something we would remit to be coming back to you on, and that could include those visits, which I think would be great. Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Cowan.
Thanks, Linda. No, just agree with what you're saying, Elaine, because I think you and I did a wee visit up to Park St Joseph's, and I think that reassured me. I know other members did similar visits as well, but certainly that was quite a key strategy for us to do, and to carry these visits. I think it gives members and pupils and all the reps to gather as much information as they can and see at first right at the cold face just what's going on in our schools, and I think that's a really good suggestion. Elaine, then I'll bring in Barry.
Just a quick follow-up. I think Linda's suggestion, a phased approach, is really sensible. And obviously, if we can tie it into the current capital investment programme that's happening in different facilities, such as the Doon Academy, then if local members are interested and can be accommodated as well, that would be useful. So we'd be in effect killing two birds with one stone. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Barry.
Thank you, Leader, and I would certainly welcome what Councillor Cowan has said in terms of visits. And I think it could be even that for establishments maybe further away, we could even do it on the day of Cabinet, have Cabinet elsewhere. It doesn't have to be in this chamber, for example. And I think that would be a good idea to maybe tie that in if you're looking to get Cabinet to go and have a look. I myself and the Shadow Education team have had a visit to the senior phase at Park School, and certainly that was really helpful in allowing us to come to deliberations there. Just a couple of questions on page 15, the second part of paragraph 35. Just looking for some assurances here, Linda, that when pupils that are currently in ASN schools, that in terms of any changes, they wouldn't be getting moved, just to give some clarity on that, because obviously moving them now, particularly mid through their education, could cause some unnecessary stress for both the young people and obviously the family, and I think just some reassurance around that. My other question is on page 18, and that is around the East team. Obviously, there has been discussions for a number of years now in terms of what would be happening with the East team, but I accept the whole landscape ASN provision in education is changing, and of course an overview of staff is welcomed. but we need to make sure that the staff are supported and that they feel supported, and to make sure they can embrace those changes. So just because obviously with our changing roles, we need to make sure people are on that journey with us. So just some reassurances around that, Linda, for both those questions, if that's okay, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely, Linda.
Yeah, thanks through you, Leader, and Councillor Douglas, two incredibly important points raised in both regards. I'll take the question about the young people. We're really clear this is a no detriment model. We've been incredibly clear about that from the start, and no young person will move out of their current school to go somewhere else. I think that could be harrowing for all stakeholders concerned. What I will say is that as new facilities do emerge, parents might make the decision, which is a different ballgame altogether. They might take that decision that they would prefer their young person to be in that new provision as they come online, subject to member agreement. And clearly that is something that in the terms of the regulations and rules around about placements that we would clearly wish to try and endeavour. But clearly that move will not come from this service, Councillor Douglas. So I offer you my fullest reassurance that that won't be the case. Moving on to the question around about the East team, I absolutely note the commentary there. We've been in consultation with that team for some significant time now, in fact a period of months. So I'm just going to hand over to Julie McCulloch and Ian Burgoyne, who can speak a little bit more about that. But clearly what we do need is to redistribute resource to enable that expertise to be present in all areas of the authority, particularly currently in those where we don't have any provision. So I'll just hand over to my colleague Julie McCulloch, who'll just pick up a wee bit more on that, if that's okay, Councillor Douglas. Thank you.
To you, Chair, and again, thank you for your question. Yes, as Linda says, we've been in consultation with the East team. Ian and myself have met with the full team to discuss their needs, where they're at with their skills and knowledge, and what potentially where we need to focus. We've also met separately with the East leadership team of principal teachers to discuss what the journey that they need to go on. We have developed a relationships and behaviour CLPL framework with which they're going to engage, and we're meeting with the full team during the course of the 2 in-service days in August to start to pinpoint a CLPL programme for what they need. We want to consult with them with where they're at the moment and where they feel they need to develop their skills. Thank you.
See, did you say Ian was going to comment, Linda? No.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Leader, for me?
I thought Ian was going to come in there. No.
No, I think Julie's answered it fully. No, she's done it.
You mentioned two names.
Thank you.
Okay, Barry.
Thank you. Just one other question. In terms of classroom assistants, in terms of that, obviously additional training and support staff will need, just any commentary on that in terms of enhancing that provision where necessary to assist obviously the East team going forward. Thanks.
Yeah, and these classroom assistants wouldn't solely rest within the East team, and clearly they've been in our sites for some time around about upskilling. Our CAs are hugely valuable to us in the authority, both in terms of core provision and that East provision as well. So in terms of that clearly I'm remitting today to come back with a further paper in terms of timescales that will also help us identify needs across the authority. A lot of that work's been ongoing for some time, so if you don't mind again, Councillor Douglas, I'll just defer over to my colleague Julie McCulloch around about some of the work that's been ongoing there, so that clearly what we don't want members to feel is, oh, we're doing this and then we'll need to pick up the mantle. This is actually something in terms of relationships and behaviour around about the reduction that we're seeing in example in the last cabinet around violence and aggression in schools, and really a lot of this is attributable to the upskilling of both teachers and CAs, courtesy of my colleagues. So if it's okay with you, Councillor Douglas, through you, Leader, I'll bring Julie in.
To you, Chair, and thank you for your question. Yes, and we've been working intensively through a number of work streams with colleagues in education. So we have an Inclusive Leaders Collaborative Improvement Network, where we have several work streams where we work with head teachers, deputy head teachers, funneling that down to class teachers and classroom assistants to make sure that everybody's apprised of national, local data and best practice in education, and interpreting that into what it means in practice in our schools. We also have a relationships and behaviour framework, which my colleague Ruth might like to speak a bit more about, where we're engaging with every school what we're doing with the schools is we are undertaking needs analysis to see where they're at within the context of their schools. We've produced inclusion data overview sets working with our colleague Gordon Pearson, our data intelligence officer, and we're using those to really drive improvement and look at what the schools actually need, the context of those learners, whether it's work around dysregulated behaviour and what we're doing to reduce that, as we were speaking about at health and safety yesterday, and also to make sure that all of our teaching staff have the necessary skills and knowledge that equip them to provide both universal and targeted supports where children need that degree of specialism.
Thanks for that. Oh, yeah.
Through you, Chair. I'm Ruth Miller, Acting Principal Educational Psychologist, and just to add to Julie's point, our schools are really good at trying to release classroom assistants to be involved in CLPL that's offered directly to schools specifically around the needs of the children within their school. So that's an ongoing action. We've also been working with additional support needs head teachers to develop a CLPL programme specifically for the ESN sector, and they want to work together and share expertise that already exists within their schools. So that's an action that we're developing next year to make sure our classroom assistants are fully supported and fully trained.
Thanks, Ruth. Okay, no comments or questions. I think if we revert to the recommendations, you've got all those series of recommendations in paragraph 71. Greater reprofiling of our current ASM provision as outlined in the report. I think we possibly the addition recommendation about carrying out a series of visits, and otherwise to note the contents of the report. Okay, are we content with that? Can we agree? Recommend? Okay, thanks. Okay, and it's the school term dates 26-27. Kenneth McNamara is going to take us through that, and within that consider an in-service date on the 6th of May 2027 for local elections. Goodness me, we're nearly there again. Kenneth.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The paper sets out the process that has been followed for the setting of the school term dates for 2026-2027. This year, there's been a slight departure from the normal pattern of setting term dates, and this is due to when Easter falls in 2027. Given the close proximity of the Easter weekend to the first 2 full weeks in April 2027, when schools would under normal circumstances have the break, it was proposed to bring the holiday forward by 1 week to include the Easter weekend.
You're right on mute, Kenneth. You got an Easter weekend, then you just... Can you hear us okay?
Sorry, I'll repeat what I've said. Given the close proximity of the Easter weekend to the first 2 full weeks in April 2027, when schools would under normal circumstances have a break, it was proposed to bring the holiday forward by 1 week to include the Easter weekend. And reference to that in the report is paragraph 7 in pages 33-34. We engaged with colleagues from both North and South Ayrshire regarding their proposed arrangements prior to consulting on 2 options for 2026-27. One option includes the Easter weekend and the spring break for 2027, and the other follows our established pattern. Most responses were in favour of the option which is presented to Cabinet to bring the holiday period forward and include the Easter weekend, in paragraph 8 on page 34 makes reference to that. There is one change to what was proposed for an in-service day of the 4th of May in 2027, and the change is to realign that to, or not to realign it, but to change it to the 24th of May. So from the 4th of May to the 24th of May, and this is to accommodate SQA exams that we anticipate will be held on that day. Cabinet is asked to agree Appendix 1, which is the pattern of school term dates, Appendix 2, which is school closure days and the pattern of school closure days. And for the benefit of members, school closure days and school leave days are important for contractual purposes for teaching staff who are contracted to teach 195 or work 195 days a year, 190 of those days are for pupil attendance, and they have an annual leave entitlement of 40 days. The remaining days are required. We are required to set out what is a leave day and what is a closure day. And we follow the normal pattern of closure days agreed with teaching union colleagues. The other item to note is that the September weekend in 2026 will align with the Ayr Gold Cup when these dates are known. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kenneth. Always thought it was you concluding the Ayr Gold Cup was important, and college just reminded me we've also got Star Wars Day, May the 4th there, included in your changes. So, members, any comments? Barry?
Thank you. Just when we started, you mentioned obviously the local elections in 2027 and for in-service day. Obviously, looking at this, I don't see the in-service day being that Thursday, which would be the day of the elections. I take it we will be, our schools will be open and continuing on polling day in May 2027.
True, Linda, or Kenneth, you there? Yeah.
Yep. Chair, I was going to say that we would follow our normal arrangements for polling places and school arrangements for local elections in terms of teacher attendance and pupil not being in attendance. That's our normal pattern.
Okay. Thanks for that reassurance. Okay, colleagues, we're content with those dates. Okay, and now going to item 4, which is the Learning Estate Management Plan 23-24. Can't be right. Maureen, well, it's a Learning Estate Management Plan anyway. Maureen McSeveny. Maureen.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. The purpose of the report is to outline the 2023-24 Learning Estate Management Plan as part of the Asset Management Framework and seek Cabinet approval for its annual submission to the Scottish Government. This is a retrospective report covering the period August 23 to June 24. There are 7 recommendations for Cabinet to consider in the report: to continue to support the vision and priorities for the learning estate, to continue to support the collaborative work between services to determine future priorities for the management of the learning estate, to note the findings of the ASN and Inclusion Review presented to you today, to note the significant progress of enhancements to the learning estate over the past 12 years, to agree the key priorities outlined in section 7, to agree the annual submission of the plan to the Scottish Government. Paragraphs 4 to 10 of the covering report provide the background and strategy sections that explain the requirement to submit the LEMP annually to Scottish Government. The contents of the plan are in line with the Council's Asset Management Framework and Capital Investment Plan agreed at Cabinet on 26th of February this year. Included in this year's plan are details around the ASN Learning Estate. The Learning Estate Management Plan is appended and the covering report summarises the main points. Section 1 of the plan is the standard information included annually. It outlines the Council's visions for the learning estate and policy context as part of the Education Service Plan, Asset Management Framework, and all in line with the Capital Investment Plan. Section 2 provides an overview of the learning estate profile, and although not required, there is a specific reference to early years outdoor learning and digital learning and teaching. Section 3 describes the condition and suitability ratings across our learning estate and demonstrates the positive impact on the overall condition and suitability of our schools because of continuing investment and regular assessment and inspections. Table 2 in this section shows the condition ratings across our learning estate and demonstrates that only one school, St Sophia's, was Category C, which relates to poor condition. And as you know, this will have an improved rating in the next year's report due to the Enerfit retrofit of St Sophia's Primary. Table 3 shows the suitability ratings, with 10 schools highlighted as Category C, which is showing major problems and or not operating optimally. Optimally. The plans to improve these ratings are shown in Table 4 in the LEMP, and plans for improvements and are further described in Section 7 under investment. Section 4 outlines the context around the importance of maintaining accurate and up-to-date information on capacities across the learning estate. It is noted that we continue to work towards an average occupancy of 85%. However, we are also working with an upper capacity limit of 90% when assessing the impact of housing growth and determining developer contributions. This section shows that within primary there's an average occupancy of 78.8%, and in secondary the average occupancy is 75%. Paragraphs 4.4 highlights those schools where occupancy levels are either high or low, and describes actions planned to mitigate the risk of under or over occupancy. These actions are further described in Section 6 of the report. Paragraph 4.5 describes the summary findings of the ASN and inclusion review presented today. The report describes the challenges in regards to the ASN learning estate as a result of the increasing numbers of children requiring additional support for learning. The tables and diagrams on pages 22 through to 24 demonstrate the increasing numbers, with a rise from 20% in 2014-15 to 31% in 24-25. Although not noted in the report, the ASN and Inclusion Review highlights the changing profile of needs and demonstrates the increasing demand for more specialist placements and enhanced supports, all of which are impacting on the capacities across our ASL centres. Table 8 on page 24 demonstrates the current ASL centres across our education groups and describes the gaps in provision. For example, there are no primary or secondary ASL centres within the Stuarton Education, or no secondary provision in Kilmarnock Education Group. Our data intelligence highlights significant need in both areas, as we have a number of pupils from these catchments being transported to Loudon Communication Centre. Plans to mitigate the challenges in respect of our ASN estate are shown in Section 7 of the plan. Section 5 describes the complex methodology around projecting school roles and demonstrates the collaborative approach to gathering and analysing data intelligence. Paragraph 5.2 describes the impact of new housing developments and the new policy that allows the council to take developer contributions for education provision. This section also describes the challenges in the west of Kilmarnock because of future housing developments, with particular implications for Crosshouse and Grange Education Group over the next few years. Strategic discussions are ongoing to consider these challenges and future actions necessary. Graphs shown in paragraph 5.4 demonstrate the projected roles for primary and secondary schools. The graphs depict a decreasing trend in roles for primary schools, whilst secondary shows an upward trend. Clearly, over time, the primary trend will translate to the secondary school, as overall the number of young people in East Ayrshire decreases. Table 10 highlights those schools with a significantly increasing or decreasing trend line, and or within a range that requires monitoring or mitigating measures. It makes reference to Appendix 5, which depicts projected roles and capacities for individual schools by education groups over 5 years. Paragraph 5.5 refers to the potential need to consider future policy should occupancy levels become unsustainable, such as mothballing or closures. Paragraph 5.6 describes a space utilisation study undertaken to assist in determining options to address occupancy pressures, such as changes to catchment areas. Again, there will be ongoing strategic discussions to consider these challenges. Section 6 describes the significant investment and progress of enhancements to improve the condition and suitability of the learning estate over the past 12 years, and Section 7 sets out the future investment as detailed in the capital investment programme and in line with the refocus priorities in relation to the learning estate. Paragraph 7.3 onwards provides a description of the priority projects listed in the table, the progress so far and future plans. New to the plan this year is additional support for learning centres, where table 14 shows the revised plan for ASL centres because of the ASN and inclusion review. The reprofiling of ASL centres and flexible spaces will require careful planning, and any funded required will be via the current capital investment allocation shown in section 7. We've tried to put a high-end plan showing short, medium and long-term plans, but as Linda described, we have an ASN project board that will take us through these projects, and hopefully it will bring back a more detailed plan on this. Implications are shown in the covering report in paragraphs 26 to 38. Thanks for the opportunity to present the paper, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Maureen. That's an excellent paper. I think looking at the condition of schools, we came a long way when you compared to other authorities. What a huge, impressive programme that we've got there, with just the one saying that's getting tackled as we speak. Just obviously a cautionary note. It's great to see, the capacity is increasing right across the board, and look at Loanhead from where we were a couple of years ago, and heading towards 99%. And but just thinking that kind of cluster there, they're all Chrysalis, Annan, Hull, Gargison. I think with the house building, they're all heading in that direction. And that's just something in terms of planning we've got to keep an eye on as well. But on the whole, a good paper. Barry.
Thank you, Leader. Just a few questions. I don't know if you want them all at once, or we can maybe break them up, if that's okay. Thank you for the paper. I think, in some ways it's quite sobering when we see the trend in a number of our schools, some going really like Loanhead, 104, I think, isn't it, percent, Fenwick, 101. But, worrying when we see other schools like Dunlop, St Xavier's, are beginning to really fall, and, sitting at below that 50% capacity. So obviously, I think in going forward, we will need to look in a strategic manner at our school estate to make sure that it best meets the needs of local communities. But just a couple of questions I wanted to ask on Willowbank in particular. So at 4.5, we've got the additional support needs section. Now, I understand in terms of no methodology as such that's been approved in terms of measuring the capacity of the schools. But as I understand, and you can tell me or otherwise, the Willowbank was built for around 50 to 60. And of course, right now it's sitting at 117. So clearly that is of concern. I think in relation to the idea of temporary modular buildings at Willowbank, I understand that as a short-term fix. Ultimately, though, where would it go? I think, it's quite a constrained site. I note the figures around £10 million for secondary ASN provision, but I know what Willowbank cost us when we built it 12 years ago. So is that figure enough? Are we going to look around our school estate, particularly in the Kilmarnock area, to look at how we could utilise maybe an existing building to create that secondary level for Willowbank and ASN in general? So just those couple of questions to start with, Linda, if that's okay, and obviously Andrew.
Yeah, through you, Chair, and thank you again, Councillor Douglas, around the commentary. Clearly, with my colleague Andrew in the room around about potentially some of the capacity stuff, but if you don't mind, I'll take Willowbank. So clearly, members, you've just agreed to the fuller ASN review, and Willowbank is clearly in scope there as well, because potentially, we are looking at all of our complex and severe needs around about that particular space. And I know there's colleagues in the room who would agree that actually it's about finding the right place for a lot of our young people to attend, and make sure that Willowbank and potentially Hillside are the right places for young people to go. So with the additional resource that members have just agreed today, clearly I think what we will see, and again, with no young person being moved from their current centre, what we should see play out if, again, my colleagues, myself and all of the stakeholders here and outside of here play their part in that, is an absolute reduction in demand for those specialist services campuses going forward, because we will have stuff in the Doon Valley is a great example, that when we get the Doon Valley campus up and running, there'll be complex needs there. So all those young people who might currently be headed for Hillside for that type of education will be able to be accommodated in the Doon Valley, which will be an absolute game changer for those young people making those distant travels. So around about the Willowbank piece specifically, Councillor Douglas, we absolutely acknowledge that there is no science around about capacity, but you're absolutely right. We also acknowledge that, you know, year on year we've seen the demand increase, but I think the bit is now is that understanding. And again, I've got my colleagues from, you know, educational psychology in the room. It's about the right fit for the right young people, and clearly the ASN review that you've agreed today absolutely gives us mandate to go and make sure that the absolutely right young people get, for example, Willowbank and Hillside. Other young people might be headed for an ASL type centre. It brings Park School into scope clearly around further discussions. Myself and the Chief Executive were out there just recently, you know, talking to the young people at Park. So clearly there's a domino effect to be expected from all of this, but I do hope that that will resolve a lot of the capacity issues around about Willowbank. And I appreciate the commentary on the modular accommodation. We're hoping it's going to be really good for Willowbank in that short term piece. And I'll maybe hand to Andrew more around about the capital 10 million that you made specific reference to, Councillor Douglas, but please know of our willingness to absolutely work alongside members and other stakeholders in this space and bringing further plans to you to address what's probably felt like a bit of an ongoing saga with some centres in particular.
Thanks, Chair. I maybe just a couple of points there that you've raised there. I think in terms of the modular building, and I think there's probably just a general statement that we have used kind of modular buildings in a number of locations. Obviously Annan Hill, Dunlop, and obviously the one that we're talking about in Willowbank. I think the difference now is that building standards is very different in terms of the requirements, and these are effectively just the equivalent of a normal building in terms of the environmental and the comfort of these facilities. So they don't feel like temporary facilities. So it is absolutely one of the areas that we do look to utilise to manage capacity and occupancy. I think just in terms of ASN, in terms of Willowbank's occupancy as well, I mean, I think it's much more about the pupil numbers and the ratios of staff as much as it is the physical space. And I think that there's a number of things that we've already done there to improve that improve the facilities and ensure we can manage those increasing numbers. But we are currently doing a further review to see if there's any other changes we can physically make within the building to enhance those facilities. In terms of the future investment, as Linda says, the ASN aspect of this will impact around a number of our facilities, and again, I think when members go out and see what we've got in some of the new facilities and some of the investment we've had recently, you'll start to see that we're building these things into the normal facilities within the new buildings that we're doing. Nether Third, Doon Campus, Stuart Academy have all built in some additional facilities that will be suitable for ASN as we go, as well as still having that £10 million to invest as well. So the group that's already been mentioned is looking at that in detail between education and facilities and property management to deal with that. I think that the second point that you made there, just around the overall occupancy levels, when we've been doing the school estate management plan since 2009, so we have built up significant trend information and background information on all of our facilities. There are things that have shifted, and the overall population change has been significant over that period of time. And even if you look at what we've already done in terms of some of the investment, where we've invested in rationalising locations and schools within certain communities, we've incorporated smaller schools into wider schools. So you mentioned St Saviour's within the partner campus. So there's a number of these things that we've consistently been developing. And again, the challenges that we're seeing longer term in Stuart and the northwest of Kilmarnock are absolutely the things that we're looking at to sort of address as we go forward. But clearly there are shorter term demands as well, and that's when we can also look at class structures as well as things like the modular facilities as well, to try and kind of maximise and make sure that every child's getting the effective education within our buildings. Hopefully that answers them all.
Thank you, and thank you to both Linda and Andrew for that. I think just sort of building on that, we obviously have had modular buildings then at Dunlop, but what we're now looking at is actually a trend where it's decreasing at Dunlop, where it's going to be in the 40% odds by 2029 in terms of the occupancy of the building. Looking at St Joseph's, and I know obviously that the Park School senior phase will therefore, I would assume, I think it is included, in fact it is mentioned, is included in the figure that St Joseph's capacity is at 56.8. So by looking at the figures, that's what 495 spaces basically we have available within St Joseph's, and obviously it's a very modern, or still relatively modern school, and it's about utilising that space. Clearly, if we've got the guts of 500 spaces within that school, what else can we do to make sure that we are making full use of a building that we're still paying for, will be paying for a while, and is of a size that and in a centrally located area within the town. So I think it's just a bit more work around that and a bit more discussion on it, and I think it maybe needs, I don't know if it's a member officer working group or something similar to have a bit of a drill down on this, because I can see what's coming. You're right, the growth areas in West and North Kilmarnock, and absolutely in the Alnwick ward, particularly around Stewarton. But that can't be at the detriment to other parts of East Ayrshire to make sure that they've got the facilities that meet the needs within those communities. Thanks.
Thanks. No, I think interesting comments, Barry. I think you mentioned Dunlop. That's been a real kind of strange one. I think with multiple extensions in the population seems to be had with a considerable boom, but it seems to be levelling off. But you can never tell sometimes with these things, just where we're going, just in terms of the maybe just there's a whole range of families moved to the village at the one time. I think that's possible. That's what's happened. I don't really know, but so it's just interesting to look at these. Andrew, do you want to comment?
I think Linda wants to maybe come in first, then I can talk.
Yeah, through you, Leader. Again, Councillor Douglas, absolutely take on board those comments. I'll leave the Dunlop piece to Andrew. In that space, the St Joseph's piece is obviously somewhat more complex, because while we find roles very hard to predict in some spaces, that becomes even more difficult in a denominational space. However, I hope that what members will take comfort from around about the utilisation of the space that we are absolutely paying for, given the newness of St Joseph's campus, is that willingness to look at always what spaces we have, rather than to potentially spend an awful lot of money bringing new builds into being that potentially aren't needed. So I suppose in layman's terms, around about sweating that resource that we have. Where we do think moving forward we have need is around about the whole SL33, SL66 type model, and how that might pertain to our ASN population. We had significant discussion at the Community Planning Partnership last week about opportunities for young people who are in that transition piece. So I'm talking the kind of age 15 piece, the adult services interface, and clearly the whole employability piece there. So whilst I'm certainly not putting my paper forward today in that regard, I do think there are some hatchling ideas that clearly could come through a member officer working group at a later date. I am absolutely open to that, Councillor Douglas, but I think there's a real piece of opportunity here for us to lead the way as a council in terms of thinking about that interface between education per se and adult services per se, and clearly one of the things I think we would definitely want to look at are possible locations in terms of demographic, but ultimately really taking a long hard look as well at that piece around about Willowbank that you've already mentioned, because for some of these young people that's quite a terrifying jump from the school sector into that adult services piece. And I think on us all to have a really good look at that and other opportunities around about employability specifically, that we might be able to clearly utilise that which we have, rather than potentially build that which we might not need. So I hope that gives an idea potentially of some of the direction of travel there, but by utilising that resource and clearly utilising staffing that we might already have across different services, so a pan service piece, I think we could be looking at something fairly special for future discussion. I'll hand to Andrew through you, leader, if that's okay to pick up on the Dunlop aspect.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm just going to had quite a wee brief discussion there with my deputy there. And we're doing a series of visits in the summer anyway. I've maybe an idea. I've seen that in Hill because my kids go there, but I think other members would like to see some of the modular units in action. If that could be added to the visits, I think that'd be worthwhile. Andrew.
Yeah.
But before I let Andrew in, Barry, just say at some point.
I think just to add on to that, absolutely, I think it's worthwhile seeing the modular units. They're not the porta cabins that used to sit at the front here many years ago. We've moved on significantly from that. I think when you're inside them, you wouldn't know the difference, but definitely worth doing. But I think worth doing if we're going to add on to visits, it might be worth having a look at some of the schools that we know there are capacity issues on both ends of the spectrum. So if they're not, they are sitting well below capacity, and those that are kind of creaking almost, to use a better phrase, getting towards that sort of 100% capacity, the ones that are, it would be worth members, I think, seeing these schools. And I think just to give us a better understanding of that strategic overview on making decisions about the future of these schools. Thanks.
Thanks. No, I think I'd take that suggestion on board and just do maybe 2 or 3 visits and just see where we get to. Just we look to have a good agenda to address all the issues with the previous item and this item as well. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, again, maybe just an additional offer. If obviously any members are interested in drilling down on the data side of it, obviously we don't necessarily need to go out and site visits to do that, but certainly we're happy to kind of further discussions with any members that want to look at a particular area or particular issues, and we can look at that. I mean, just on the point around Dunlop, and again, I think that probably just really emphasises the extent of the positive work that we've been doing over the last 5 years around the links between education, housing, development, and economic growth and planning, and within facilities and property management. I think the outcome of that in terms of the wider strategic part is things that we're actually looking at the moment, and there will be some further information coming from that. I think, as I've said, there's a number of areas where we do have the ability to take action, and obviously investing and extending our buildings is probably the last option that we would do, but clearly we've had to do that previously within Dunlop. I think Dunlop also had some unique pressures because of small developments that were able to be built within the community at that time. And I think you were right, leader, there. I think it was very much that type of housing that was built, the locations it was built, and it drew in a number of families. Those families have stayed in their houses as their children grew up, and we're seeing that across a number of other communities as well, where there was a large increase initially in new builds, but that sort of starts to tail off as well. So again, taking the decision to look at modular facilities, or where we can use some of the additional available space. There are kind of calculations that include supplementary spaces that you can use as well on a temporary basis. Clearly, the smaller the school, the less of those spaces you've got and the less flexibility you've got. So a number of those things have obviously factored into the decisions previously around Dunlop. And then again, as we've seen things develop, clearly the early years policy and the opportunity to invest in a separate building for that has also then created additional space within the facility as well. So again, trying to balance out a number of those different factors as we go forward. And again, even as we've talked about in terms of the wider opportunities, there's still things like catchment changes and things like that as well that can be considered to develop that longer term model. Hopefully that helps.
No, that is helpful, Andrew. Thanks for that. Anyone else? Drew?
Thanks, Chair. Just a wee question for Linda. Improving the fallen role at Doon Academy. I think it was mentioned a wee while ago there, we floated an idea about bringing some of the kind of Dumfries and Galloway pupils in. It's nearer to Dolmellington and the East Ayrshire boundary. Was that no kind of get spoken about at one time if we were down at Doon Academy?
Not to my knowledge, Councillor Filson. I do know that Dumfries and Galloway are undertaking quite a significant review of their schools, given rurality and some of the models that they potentially have. They've certainly not approached us to take any of the young people from D&G. Clearly, I would be I would be coming back to this chamber if that were the case, but no plans at this time. Councillor Filson in that particular space.
Okay, thank you.
It's an interesting, it's maybe one for a dialogue for the new administration there. I think with the issue with the mothball at New Galloway and St John's, there's maybe an opportunity and to make Doon Academy more sustainable was a good suggestion, Drew, and I think we'll maybe, have those conversations. Eddie.
Thanks, Leader. It's just a couple of times this morning we've talked about visits to our schools. So I think, likely, like Linda, working with yourselves, we need to set out clearly what the purpose of the visits is in the programme, so as we can, be clear, about that. Because clearly, if we're doing it wide range, it'll take a wee bit of time to work round. We've got a lot of schools, so a wee bit of saying, here's the purpose of what we're doing, because it might be slightly different in different schools as we spoke out, and here's the programme, and that'll let the head teachers in each of the establishments actually set it up and get best benefit out of that. So we'll do that wee bit of work and come back. I don't mean it has to come back to a cabinet, but offline we can come back to people and make sure we're clear about that.
That's absolutely helpful, yeah. Okay, right, can we go to recommendations there on page 42? Can we agree recommendations? Okay, and final E item is the policy review schedule. Donna.
Thanks, Chair. So the purpose of the policy review schedule is to recommend to Cabinet the proposed changes to the employment policies, and these are detailed within the recommendations at paragraph 2. The background is covered by paragraphs 3 to 5, and this relates to our process for regular review of policies. Paragraph 7 details the first policy that's been reviewed, and that's the support and performance at work policy. And it provides detail of where the changes have been made. So at paragraph 1.1, a sentence has been added to include that a guide is available for managers to assist them in the process. Paragraph 1.3 has been updated to confirm that chief executives are covered by the chief executive disciplinary framework. Paragraph 3.4 has been updated to remove reference to harassment and bullying procedure and replaced it with the dignity at work policy. And paragraph 7.1 has been updated to remove managers are able to access the Conversation Matters module and replaced with a number of modules that are available on the Learning Academy to support managers in this process. Paragraph 8 is regarding the working time regulations. So this is a new policy that was created to replace former guidance issued within Per Circular 1419. The purpose of the policy is to outline the main provisions of the working time regulations and to ensure that workers understand their rights and protections, and managers within East Ayrshire Council can support workers to ensure that they're not working in excess of these limits. Paragraph 9 covers the neurodiversity at work guidance. This is a new guidance document which has been created to provide information and guidance to both employees and managers on how to support an employee who has disclosed that they are neurodiverse, and is based on the principles that all employees will be treated fairly and with respect if they choose to share that they are neurodivergent, and that they will be included in discussions about their condition and the decision-making process regarding any reasonable adjustments that may be put in place. The key areas covered by the guidance are that it provides a definition of neurodiversity as well as descriptions of the most common neurodiverse subtypes. It provides guidance for managers on the importance of creating a supportive, neuro-inclusive culture and physical environment where everyone thrives, and includes support and advice on practical steps to take when considering and accommodating any reasonable adjustments during employment. It highlights that not all people who are neurodivergent have a diagnosis of such, and that there is no requirement for a formal diagnosis. And advice should always be sought in the first instance from occupational health and HR business partners when considering any reasonable adjustments. It provides guidance and examples of what a reasonable adjustment may be for different subtypes, but that any adjustment will always be dependent on what a service can provide. It also points to the support provided by Access to Work through the Department of Work and Pensions and provides a link to a further process document for managers and employees to follow when considering access to work options. It highlights that some employees who are neurodivergent may struggle with communication, and it provides a sample template for communication which an employee and their manager can complete together if it would be helpful for them, so it's not compulsory. It signposts to a range of external and internal supports which are available for employees. Paragraph 10 of the report covers supporting attendance at work, and this is just giving a wee update. So the supporting attendance at work policy is currently undergoing a full-scale review as a result of the ongoing work of the new supporting attendance and wellbeing team, including the current pilot programme focusing on early intervention linked to stress absence. A short life working group is underway to review the policy and take account of this work and further policy developments required. It's our intention to continue to review the impact of the work of the supporting attendance and wellbeing team and therefore postpone the policy update until early in 2026. So that outlines that report and then would take you back to those recommendations which are Cabinet been asked to approve, the changes to the supporting performance at work policy, the new working time regulations policy, the new neurodiversity at work guidance for managers document, and the update on the supporting attendance at work policy. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Members, any comments or questions? It's quite straightforward. Can we agree the recommendations? Okay, I think that brings us to the end of our items. The Cabinet spokespersons want to take the opportunity to leave and just thanks for your attendance just now. Just got a couple of minutes to do that. Sorry, members, I've just, this is one for Andrew. I've just been pinged for Annan Hill Primary School last day, whether it's cheese, tuna or gammon. I don't know if that's a packed lunches, I don't know if that's extensive. You'll probably hear from one of your customers later on about that.
Leader, were you not talking about Hawaiian pineapple last week?
That's a challenge, that's okay. Okay, maybe that's something we'll look at when we're doing our visits. Well, maybe I can do a school dinner as well, maybe our school lunch. Quality testing. Okay. Thanks, members, for that wee interlude. Just going with the rest of the business cabinet today. Next item's property management plan progress report. Angela.
Thanks, Leader. So this is the kind of the annual property management plan report that members will be familiar with, and the key decisions within this report are outlined in the recommendations within table 3 and 4 within the report. So kind of drawing your attention to paragraph 11, kind of since the last kind of progress report, we've seen our green scoring buildings have decreased by both number and percentage, but that's probably to be expected, kind of given the age of our buildings and the kind of some of the current budget pressures we have But on a positive, the red scoring buildings have also decreased by both numbers and percentage, and that's kind of predominantly due to a lot of decisions that were taken within the property management plan last year. So moving on to table 3, this kind of highlights some of the key properties that are kind of requiring consideration where they're kind of scoring kind of red in low amber. I'll not go through each one in detail, but maybe just draw attention to the Gauqueland Roads Depot, which is highlighting this year as red for the first time. So we're going to undertake a review of the works that are required in order to bring that up to the relevant standard. But it's just also worthwhile noting, I think just within the last week, the salt dome there had suffered kind of storm damage, and we've just been advised that that's not going to be covered by insurance requirements. So it's something we'll need to consider an alternative replacement and bring information on that back to members. Moving on to the kind of future investment in component renewal and life cycle works, we've started to see some works happening in this summer in particular. There's a significant programme of works, underway across our estate as well. And this year we were fortunate to receive budget allocation through the capital investment programme for the property pledge. So we're able to go back in again, starting over the summer, to prioritise investment initially on those properties that have got a C rating or lower for the kind of redecoration or sanitary services. So hopefully we'll see that investment will help to improve the condition of our stock moving forward as well. Moving on to kind of vacant and surplus property section within the report, within Appendix 2, we've provided an update to members on some of the recommendations that they approved last year to kind of help show kind of some of the significant progress that has been made. 2 of the properties that were recommended last year have been sold, another 3 are under offer, and another 1 has been placed on the market. So I think over the last year we've seen that we've managed to kind of significantly reduce our kind of vacant property holding costs and the risks around this, and we also kind of managed to generate capital receipts of just under £1 million as well. So table 4 kind of outlines some of the kind of key decisions that are required around the vacant and surplus properties as well. Again, I'll not go into all of them in detail, but I'm happy to take any questions on the report from members. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Jim?
Thanks, Angela. Thanks for the paper, and it's glad to see some of the work that's been done about that, proving on more red status there. The only one concern I do have, and it's based off the vacant properties that we do have in Cumnock like sitting as long as that. Kirk Style to sit as long as that for me would be another temptation, especially coming off the back of the Police Fire and Rescue Committee yesterday and their concerns in linking the amount of derelict buildings with the increase in fires. There, so it's another derelict building I would urge urgency to try and get some in there or potentially make quicker decisions around about what we do with Kirk Style.
No, I absolutely agree, and obviously hopefully members will start to see things moving on fairly shortly on both the Auchinleck and Green Mill front. We've kind of got quite positive progress on that, but that's why within the report this year under the risk implications section we've kind of emphasised some of those, the risks particularly around the vacant property. We work closely with colleagues in risk and insurance to regularly review them and kind of update the measures that we need to take as and when matters arise.
Barry?
Thank you. I think I would absolutely align myself with the comments the Deputy Leader has made relative to our vacant properties. We need to make sure, that they are protected. But I'm keen to make sure whatever we do about Kirk Style, we think about that maybe rather than wait the year. I think as soon as we can, given what we've discussed in the previous papers, it would make sense to do that. In terms of the former Glebe Road Old People's Cabin, I just wondered if you can share any information, if maybe not for here, for the Ward 4 members as a collective, if you can give us some information on that. Thanks.
Happy to do so after this, Councillor Douglas.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, can we agree recommendations on page 110? Okay, and next item is the place-based investment programme. Is it yourself, David?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Chair. The purpose of the report is to update members on the projects undertaken through the 2024 and 2025 Place-Based Investment Programme and to set out the approach to managing the programme for this financial year, noting that Year 5 is the final year of the Place-Based Investment Programme and funding is yet to be confirmed by the Scottish Government. The report has set out the progress of the Place-Based Investment Programme and developer contribution funds awarded last financial year. In summary, significant progress has been made. All 13 projects have had contracts in place by the 31st of March 2025, meeting programme requirements, with 6 projects completed, with the remainder estimated for completion by the end of 2025. It also sets out the principles we intend to apply to the Place-Based Investment Programme for Year 5, of which to date there is, as I mentioned before, there's been no funding allocation as yet. The Year 5 approach is to target investment towards new groups and projects at investment-ready projects and encourage projects to be able to leverage wider investment into the local communities. An annual report, an allocation of £64,000 is required to maintain the programme monitoring compliance support for current projects and the new Year 5 place-based investment projects. It's also requested that initial allocation of £20,000 be agreed for the shopfront improvement scheme from the place-based investment allocation when confirmed by Scottish Government. So paragraphs 3 through to 5 sets out the background for the 5-year Scottish Government investment programme with its key principles, as you'll see in the report, focusing on community-led regeneration, 20-minute neighbourhoods, community wealth building, and focusing on the place principle. As you'll be aware, the eligible costs within place-based investment are capital costs incurred by local authorities or third parties and programme monitoring compliance support, and expenditures of projects must be have contracts in place by the 31st of March. No specific time frame is given for the completion of the projects by Scottish Government. However, locally there is a focus on delivery at the earliest opportunity. Paragraph 5 sets out the original Scottish Government spending profile, including a forecast of £792,000 for this financial year. Members will recall that in September 2024, a report was presented to Cabinet noting the reduction in Year 4 funding from £792,000 to £392,000 and an allocation of £21,000 of unallocated historical developer contribution monies. Appendix 1 sets out the detail for Year 4 progress reports in line with programme requirements, and Appendix 2 sets out the progress of the developer contribution funded projects as at 31st of May. We have received a letter from the Scottish Government in terms of Year 5 earlier in January, and that set out the funding for this financial year would be allocated through Scottish Government approval. As I say, yet we've still to receive that funding, but this process today is to set out the due process that we'll undertake ready for once we get that confirmation of funding. In terms of the assessment process, paragraphs 11 to 13 sets out the Year 5 proposals, and we are intending, as in previous years, to ensure there's an open recruitment process in place with a panel brought together from local citizens who have had experience of managing regeneration projects and who will be able to assess applications independently of senior officers who will sit in a separate panel. The separate panel of senior officers will then score, bring those scores together from the community panel assessment, and then from that there'll be a ranking, and ultimately we'll distill that into a set of priorities. Paragraphs 14 through to 16 sets out the recommendations for investment to date, with noting that the funds of £267,000 have supported 74 completed shopfront businesses and 21 currently are in progress throughout East Ayrshire. And there is still an appetite for this funding, as colleagues are finding out from businesses, and we're looking for £20,000 to be set aside for that, along with the £20,000 that's been secured from the Kilmarnock Strategic Group at their 1st of April meeting. To maintain the programme monitoring compliance support, we're looking for an allocation of £64,000 set aside against that. In essence, the the grant award will then be, once we've received that, we'll be able to make an assessment against all the relevant projects that are coming into the programme. So in summary, Chair, the report is there. It sets out the recommendations in paragraph 2, and happy to answer any questions. And Sharon's with me today if there's any specific questions in the individual projects. So happy to answer.
Thanks, David. Barry?
Thank you. Just have a very quick question, David. In terms of the Darvel Area Regeneration Team for the Waterloo Path, I noticed obviously when the report was written that the 30th of May was the estimated date for completion. Has it completed?
Yeah, you've been very spot on in terms of establishing that. It has been completed, but it was just finished 2 weeks ago. So that's clarified.
Okay, Drew?
Thanks, Chair. Just disappointed to see this fund coming to its end now, again, after 5 years. It's been a great fund in the communities. You can just have a look round about. I've went and visited many of the projects, just how good it's been. But like the Share the Love project that was done by Sharon Colday there. Sharon made it fun, for all the communities, brought all the communities together. All the communities shared their experiences and how they deliver their projects. So it's really been a first-class effort for our team there at the place base. So thanks to them.
No, that's absolutely valid, and just sharing that information, that was really good. Just cross-learning there. No, it's a very good point. Okay, anyone else? Okay, can we look at the recommendations? And now going to the RCGF. Oh, sorry, Barry.
Leader, just before we go on to that paper, obviously, in the past where we've been discussing Take a Bow, I've given a transparency declaration there. Obviously, there's nothing here that doesn't allow me to make a decision as a board member of Take a Bow out with the council. But just obviously to make that declaration, given there is mention of that within the paper. Thanks.
No, absolutely fair comment, Barry, and I think just that's being consistent. That's fine. Okay,
yeah,
yourself, David.
Yes, through you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update Cabinet on the progress of the current Regeneration Capital Grant Fund projects and to notify Cabinet on the newly announced round of funding, the intention that is open to projects to submit a Stage 1 RCGF application for 26-2027. Paragraphs 3 and 4 sets out the background to the place-based regeneration community projects delivered through this project scheme. Delivered since 2014, and to date, projects in East Ayrshire have received £11.3 million from this funding, and that's made a total contribution of £21.7 million of investment, covering facilities in Crossroads, Ochiltree, New Cumnock and numerous in Kilmarnock. In relation to the current projects, paragraph 5 summarises the Take a Bow development, which has been awarded a total grant funding of 1.49 million towards a total project of 2.7 million to regenerate and refurbish the former community building into a modern and functional facility that will run community development, employability and enterprise programmes to tackle inequalities and deliver a range of economic and social outcomes for local people, improve public health and wellbeing and address child poverty in the disadvantaged community. The work's been completed the work's been completed and the building was handed back to the community on the 16th of May. Paragraph 7 through to 9 sets out the New Cumnock Renews project developed by New Cumnock Development Trust, who were awarded a total grant fund of 2.1 million towards a project of 2.7 million. The project has refurbished a vacant derelict building into a reuse hub that will operate a social enterprise that develops economic and employability activity and creates sustainable jobs within a community building. Significant progress is being made by the Trust and their contractor towards completion by the end of September 2025. Work to the roof is currently being completed, with new windows being installed and making the building fully wind and watertight. Paragraphs 10 through to 17 confirm that Scottish Government are streamlining the RCGF process and that funding previously delivered through the Vacant and Derelict Investment Programme and the Regeneration Capital Fund programme are being pulled together. The closing date of this submission of applications is 5 p.m. on the 27th of June, and as you will appreciate, this has only been open for a month period. So we'd also highlight that the funding criteria requires that where local authorities submit multiple applications, RCGF require that the applications be prioritised, while noting that RCGF is a capital expenditure fund. Costs associated with the feasibility, early design costs and the future running costs are not eligible. So the potential projects required to demonstrate they meet the Scottish Government priorities to eradicate child poverty, grow the economy, tackle climate emergency and ensure high quality and sustainable public services. Projects required to focus in areas that suffer from high levels of deprivation and disadvantage, demonstrate clear community involvement, deliver large-scale transformational change with strong regeneration outcomes, and also encourage additional investment and address market failures in communities. Paragraph 14 sets out the strategic areas of the priority and core principles that the project will be considered against. And paragraph 15 sets out how the Scottish Government will assess the proposals. So due to the short timescales for stage 1 applications, discussions have been held in the potential significant capital investment projects at community involvement, which the various services within the council, being economic growth, vibrant communities, community-led regeneration teams are aware of. And from this review of the potential projects, a short list of projects has emerged, and these were prioritised, and following that, the assessment summary is set out in Appendix 1. As a result of this assessment, it's considered appropriate to submit 2 Stage 1 applications in priority order. Firstly, supporting Cumnock Juniors Community Enterprises Townhead Community Sports and Wellbeing Hub, and second priority, a combined energy efficiency upgrade and Ayrshire Victim Support Hub at centre stage. The first priority project is the Cumnock Juniors Community Enterprise, who have evolved from a sports-centric organisation into a multifaceted social enterprise that greatly contributes to the community's health and wellbeing. It operates from Townhead Community Sports Hub and offers diverse services including sports facilities, community health and wellbeing programmes, and community events. The proposed comprehensive modernisation and enhancement of its facility and services will enable the community enterprise to continue its significant role in fostering community wellbeing, inclusivity and social economic development in Cumnock. The new pavilion will have a flexible space and host sports and other physical activities while also being adaptable for community events and gatherings. The project has received planning consent and will allow the community enterprise to cater to the diverse needs of the community. The total project is anticipated to be 2.2 million, with 1.9 million construction costs, and community enterprise are in the process of securing 1.6 million from a range of funders, including the SFA and Sports Council, and they are seeking a balance of £539,000 from RCGF. The second priority project is the energy efficiency upgrade and Ayrshire Victim Support Hub at Centre Stage Village in Kilmarnock. The joint project between Centre Stage and Victim Support will increase the former Kilmarnock Academy building's energy efficiency and longevity, thereby supporting the sustainability of Centre Stage, the building and the numerous organisations collaboratively working within it. This project will also provide a pan-Ayrshire trauma-informed support hub, offering vital services to victims and witnesses annually across Ayrshire. The combined project has a total cost of 2.3 million, with a £300,000 match funding being secured by Centre Stage and a minimum match funding of 75,000 by Victim Support Scotland. This will result in a request of 1.99 million from RCGF. In terms of implications, I would highlight paragraph 23 to 25 that the successful projects will be subject to an offer of grant and a memorandum of understanding from the council regarding the projects. Chair, the recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, David. Just to keep myself right, I think mentioned the Victim Support and Centre Stage project. I was in that advisory group, and I think you were too, Barry, but it's no mate. And I don't know if it stood in or not, but just in terms of transparency, just in case it hasn't stood in. And if Barry could do the same, we'll maybe check that, but just to keep us all right.
Yeah, just to second what the leader has said there in terms of centre stage, we were both on the advisory board. I think it has been stood down, but just for just to make it clear.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. If I can turn the clock back a wee bit to the day in the chambers where we made passionate pleas for the reuse hub in New Cumnock, where the Scottish Government at that particular time were asking us to prioritise a particular application, and only through the council submitting two in a passionate plea, I've finally seen the benefits of that coming towards fruition in New Cumnock, and what a beautiful place it's going to turn out to be, and what a difference that makes to the landscape of that particular town. It's absolutely great to see that coming along, and look forward to the completion of that and the official opening to it as well. But as I said at the time, it certainly lifts the full village as far, and again, pay tribute to the trust for their vision for that as well at the particular time, and likewise for the current application that sits with Cumnock Juniors Enterprise Trust and the group that's involved with that, and the vision that they had initially to set that, and the fantastic work they've already done to secure some of that funding. So delighted to see that this application hopefully be supported today and take that one forward as well.
Thanks, Jim. Barry?
Thanks, Leader. I think, David, if we can get some information maybe around what the energy efficiency upgrades are proposed at centre stage, I think that would be good, just to know a bit more about it, but offline from this. In terms of the Victim Support Hub, I assume, I mean, maybe guide me here, that whilst that's combined for the purposes of the application, that the Victim Support Hub would be moving to centre stage. Is that the case, or is it very much dependent on this these energy efficiency works as part of the package?
Yeah,
Thanks.
the space that Victim Support are looking at is as you'll appreciate, is effectively there. The works that they're proposing to do, I mean, there's as a location that they could utilise the space. It's not what they were looking for, but they were looking to go in there. I'll get further information just what their long-term proposals are, whether if it's based on the fact if they don't get the support, then they'll. But my understanding is they're looking for a venue, and that was going to be the venue. But this bid is to help to bring that facility up to a part of the building, and I'll maybe make it clear, because obviously centre stage has had a lot of money through RCGF, that this is an area of that hasn't been obviously previously grant funded. So it's just to be clear in that as well. Yeah. So just to answer your question now, Councillor, they're looking at boiler replacement, flooring, heating and systems upgrades. They were looking at certainly fabric upgrades in certain areas, and they were looking at the types of renewables within the building as well that could be put on. Certainly there was a discussion that I've certainly had with Fiona Mackenzie around the use of solar panels in that building, how to maximise that. So that's a range of what they were looking at, and that would all be supported through one of the energy assessments that's carried out to see what's the best use of fabric and renewable energy to upgrade that.
Is it? Yeah, my understanding was it was the top floor was to come into use, which should possibly has been kind of mothballed, so that would make sense in terms of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Members can agree recommendations. Okay, and the community benefits from renewable energy benefits update. Yes,
yeah, that's myself again, Chair.
Yeah.
This report updates members on the current pattern of voluntary community benefits across East Ayrshire from wind farm developments. The key recommendation is that no changes should be made to the distribution of Renewable Energy Fund monies at this point in time, and that the current REF eligibility criteria should be maintained for applications for REF funding for 2026. This is based on a balanced understanding of the current and projected future funding streams that will be available to communities. A further report will be brought to Cabinet in June 2026, which will again assess the funding landscape across across the area to establish whether there's any new additional funding received from wind farms that start to come into that have been commissioned. The key recommendation is that, as I say, no changes have been made to distribution at this point, and the current REF funding eligibility should be maintained. Members will note in paragraph 5 set out the eligibility criteria which the current 5 wind farms pay into the Renewable Energy Fund. However, the established policy was amended last year as set out in the report, and at the 10-year point, instead of part of funding automatically being opened up out into the wider community, a review will be undertaken to assess whether parts of the fund should indeed be made available to a wider spatial area. This review will take account of the ongoing need and demand for funding within the 10k buffer and the wider funding landscape beyond the 10k buffer, taking cognisance of what funding will be available to the other relevant communities. Table 1 lists the wind farms currently paying into the REF, the level of contribution and when 50% of the funding is due to be widened out. Contributions are index linked and have therefore risen with inflation. As you'll see from the table, the original Whiteley wind farm is getting £1,000 per megawatt. The extensions are 2.5, and then Hare Hill is 2.5, Gallop Whistle £5,250, and then Afton and Snedden's Law are £2,500. Those were all agreed through the planning process at a time when before the Scottish Government's guidance came in 2014. So obviously there's a disparity there between what is currently on offer to communities and to what was provided then. One of the actions from the last report last year was to speak to Scottish Power. We've been in constant dialogue with Scottish Power. We've actually developed a good relationship with them and are looking to, in a number of areas, to get real opportunities for the communities in East Ayrshire, and members will be aware that we've recently introduced the Whiteley Skills Fund through this funding, which will deliver 30 apprentices and 30 interns along with pre-employment training. But one of the kind of asks has been of, can we get the funding updated from the £1,000 or £2,500 to £5,000, and it certainly we were at a resounding no initially, but discussions are ongoing and there's a proposal to meet between the leaders of East Ayrshire, East Renfrewshire and South Lanarkshire to take forward discussions directly with the Scottish Power. So as noted in paragraph 7, it is now commonplace across Scotland that developers work directly with community groups to agree community benefits rather than paying into the funds such as the REF fund. So while the REF fund for East Ayrshire remains a viable option for developers, it is now one that's being used far less. And in paragraph 8 sets out the work undertaken by the 9cc group in delivering strategic community benefit funding towards community and legacy projects within the coalfield. Appendix 1 demonstrates the spatial map of the scale of development working through the planning process and which stage those applications are at. In terms of the spatial disbursement of renewable funds across East Ayrshire, Table 2 provides an update to break down the projected community benefit monies. This has been completed with valuable input from 9cc Group and Foundation Scotland, and other developers have shared their draft financial projections with officers. It should be noted, as per the 2024 paper, that projections are subject to change and delay, and this can be result in wind farm funds flowing at a later date than originally anticipated. Several wind farm developers are facing challenging financial circumstances and obviously issues like grid connections as well, and that's requiring them in some instances to reprofile their community benefit commitments. Chair, the recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Dave. Good report. Just you mentioned the negotiations about Whiteley's, and I think we've got a date in the summer to meet Owen O'Donnell and that's Joe Fagan for South Larg, as well as East Red. So hopefully we can impress upon them just that and yeah, we strategy to deal with this over the summer. Anybody else want to come in? Ian.
Thanks, Dougie, and thanks, David. It's a great paper. I think it sums up well where we are just now. Obviously, we're anticipating the 9cc fund getting up and running in the near future, and that will take a bit of the strain off the sharing of the Whiteley's money. So, yeah, I think them being more generous, they seem to be quite keen in the projects that we've supported in the past. The Scottish Power, their Glossy magazine featured an awful lot of projects that have taken place in East Ayrshire, and I welcome the closer relationship we're building. I think the 30 apprentices and internships was a great idea, and I think that's something that Scottish Power should be working with us to promote and possibly expand in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
So just to come back in that, Chair, yeah, I mean, with the discussion with Scottish Power, I think they nearly bit my hand off when we suggested it. So they do want the let's say the accolades that go along with their funding going towards these apprenticeships. We're also working with Ayrshire College and looking at trying to bring some of the pre-apprenticeship training that is delivered both centrally in Glasgow and Edinburgh towards Ayrshire College. So those discussions are well advanced, and there obviously, we know that there's a gap in the renewable sector, and it's the more we discuss it with SSE and Scottish Power, they highlight that both they're losing significant people to the supply chain, and in doing so they're investing a lot of people into the area, but what we're trying to do is to get a lot of those vacancies filled with residents within East Ayrshire. So that's the work that we're going on and doing just now.
Thanks, David. Good. That's good to hear. Anybody else? Okay, can we go to recommendations? Can we agree them? Okay, and now move exclusion of press and public. Can we agree? Yeah, and the final two items. First one's